Hello, thank you for joining me again in this discussion about archetypes. My name is Stacey Couch and my website is wildgratitude.com. So in the last video we talked about personality tests and strengths tests, and we also talked about archetypes and learning what the difference is between the two and how archetypes are actually integrated into a spiritual practice and really serve us well, and learning more what we are here to do on a soul level in this lifetime, in the really big picture in this lifetime, rather than just knowing about ourselves and what we do, how we respond in certain situations, and what our strengths are or in weakness are. With archetypes, we have the opportunity to know those things and so much more. So I wanted to just touch in on a couple of different things here today in this video. I want to definitely review some of what I talked about last time, maybe summarize it in a different way, and then I want to give you some questions to work with so that you can start to work on and discover what your archetypes are. So as we were talking about before in the last video, archetypes are very much more than just knowing what your temperament is, knowing maybe what your preference is. They are more than learning, well, I like to go home and have it be quiet, or I like to go home and have a bunch of friends over. Very different. Also very different than knowing, well, I'm really good at having a structured work environment and doing project timetables and deadlines, or I really am really good at being adaptable and flexible in the workplace. Much more than that. They actually take us into why we do the things we do. Not just what we do and how we do it, but why we do the things we do. So that's an important thing to know about archetypes. They really help you know who you are and know where you derive your power from. So I talked a lot about the artist in the last video. The artist derives her power from being creative, from moving in inspiration and beauty out into world, into form, seeing beauty out in the world. That is where power is for the artist archetype. For the nun, power is in having time to contemplate and be in communion with the divine, read scriptures, talk with others about matters of the soul. That is where the base of power is for the nun, for example. So that helps you understand more too, is where do I fuel myself? How do I get power? How do I have more passion and inspiration in my life? And knowing your archetypes will lead you straight into that answer, which is fantastic. So different ways that you can look at what are my archetypes, right? So first, like I said before, we're definitely going to want to go straight into what your talents are. That's one place we really go, or talents we wish we had. So we might choose the guide out of wishing we were really good counselors for our friends and hoping that's something that we're good at. May or may not be true, but that is where we go. So I mentioned in the last video, but I went to the student very easily and quickly. I've always been a student, even though I haven't been in school my whole life. I've constantly been learning and studying things. I have stacks of books around me all the time. Very easy to see. I've always done well in school and gotten good grades and studied hard, and I take it very seriously. So that was very easy to see through my strengths what one of my archetypes was. And but you don't really know for sure that it's one of your archetypes until you flip it over and look at the weaknesses side or the shadow side. So with archetypes, all archetypes have a light and a shadow side. This is key, so follow me here. Don't miss this piece. All archetypes have a light aspect and a shadow aspect to them. Now, regardless of the name, regardless of what they may sound like. So when you hear bully, you think, ooh, shadow aspect. You think, God, what could be good about having the bully archetype? The bully archetype in its light aspect helps us identify our inner fears and conquer them. Helps us overcome cowardice. The thief. Whoa, wow. How can there be anything good about that? Once again, right away, we see the shadow. The light aspect of the thief is learning your own value and knowing you don't have to steal from others to survive or have what you need in the world, or you think you need in the world, right? So those are obvious ones. Then there's light aspects. So you might look at the angel and think, what's wrong with having the angel? Well, the angel may get dependent on other people needing her. Well, that's especially true with the rescuer, right? But the angel is like, wow, that person's such an angel. They're always here for me. The angel may get so much into selflessness that they may lose their sense of self and lose taking care of themselves. That's a shadow aspect of the angel archetype. So as we continue on, so what could be wrong with the priest, right? Well, some people can very easily see the shadow right away. Other people see the light. So that helps. There's some that are really easy to see both the shadow and the light, and some that are really, wow, I only see the light. What could be the shadow? Or I only see the shadow, what could be the light? And so it's really helpful to always know, to go back to and look at that every single archetype has a light and a shadow. So when you're thinking about this, you're not just looking for strengths, and you're not just looking for the weaknesses. And in the personality testing, back when it all started initially, and like I was talking about in the business world, there was a focus on finding weaknesses. Well, what are my weaknesses? Where do I need to shore myself up? And we can do that with archetypes too, is go towards, well, here's the things I don't do well, or here's the things that I've struggled with. But now we've had more of this focus on being gifted, talented, what are your strengths? And so people often come in at the archetypes with the strengths. And you can absolutely discover some of your archetypes that way, but I can guarantee you're not going to discover all of them that way. You do need to come in through the back door and look at the shadow. So here is a key question. Yes, go ahead, write down all your strengths, write down what you're good at, write down what you're gifted at, and not just personality traits. Don't just say, well, I'm really good in groups. No, not something like that. I'm really good at being there for my friends. I'm really good at creating beauty in my environment. I'm really good at learning a lot of different things at once. That would be the dilettante or the Renaissance man. So when you're explaining your gifts, at least do me the favor of going a little bit deeper than just you're really good with people, or you're really precise or structured in the way you do things. Let's go a little bit deeper than those personality tests in that way. But then here's the key question. Now, once you're ready, let's look at what distresses you. What kind of people do you not like? And this is going to be a tough one. So that's the thing with the archetypes is they challenge us to look at the sides of ourselves we don't like, and then see the light aspect. So you might have to enter into the shadow before you can turn it around to see the light, because they all have a light aspect. So are you really put off by people who are who won't save someone in trouble? So maybe you're really put off by people who do save someone in trouble. So you're constantly labeling others as rescuers. If you find yourself constantly labeling other people as a certain thing, it's probably your shadow archetype talking about something in you that you're in denial of. Does that make sense? So, for example, I had a really hard time a lot of my life seeing starving artists, seeing people who were brilliant artists, but like barely able, if even able to put food on the table always. And that was really distressing for me to see. Whenever I even came close to thinking about I wanted to be an artist, I would immediately think of these people that I knew that were starving artists. And I couldn't bear the thought of that. It was absolutely distressing for me. And that's the shadow artist coming through. Hopefully that makes some sense to you. And then let's go ahead and take a look at what compels you. So is there a mystery in your life that you have not been able to explain? That's just the way I am. I've always done it that way. And for me, I was just always engrossed in school. I was always learning. That's just how I was. Well, student archetype, right? So if you find something that you're just always compelled to do, that you're just constantly engrossed in, you have no idea why, this is an archetype working in you, or a couple of archetypes working in you. So write down those things that you're just compelled to do. Are you compelled to be there for other people no matter what? And you can't stop doing it. And even though convention tells you that you should. So those types of things, do you find that you're just compelled to spend time writing poetry? There is a poet archetype, and you don't know where it comes from, and you don't know why, and it doesn't serve any purpose in terms of making any money for you. You're not going to ever do it as a job. So archetypes aren't jobs either. So please go beyond what your career is, or your job, or even your vocation is. Go beyond that. Your career may be indicative of one of your archetypes, but it doesn't have to be indicative of one of your archetypes. So please absolutely keep that in mind, because I think people, if they're a chemist, they think, well, what archetypes fit me being a chemist, and then they come through with the engineer. They may or may not have the engineer. I'm a shamanic practitioner. Does that mean I have the shaman archetype? Not necessarily. There may be a combination of, or another archetype that speaks through my path, my vocation as a shamanic practitioner. So please know that it does, what you do for a living does not necessarily mean that you have that as an archetype. And it doesn't mean you're in the wrong job. It just means that your archetype is not an archetype is not a job. So look at some of the challenges, some of the things you've just constantly had to overcome. You think, man, I hope I have it down this time, and then it comes back again in another form, maybe even more difficult the next time. Those challenges are archetypal patterns that are coded in your DNA, coded in your karma from the moment of inception, from when you come into this world. Okay, so some ways to find those. The challenges is a helpful thing. You may find one or two archetypes or more that way. Another thing to do is to look at your earliest memories. So what are some of your early memories? Maybe just write those down and then find the archetype within those memories. So do you find that even at an early age with friends that you were jumping to their rescue? When they were in a tough situation, you would drop everything and be there for them. Now you've had an opportunity to understand the light and the shadow aspect of archetypes a little better. And that is one place where they're really differentiated from these personality profiles. Because the personality profiles tell you where you fall along a scale between two extremes. So for instance, with pacing, you may be steady at the steady end of the scale versus the urgent end of the scale, where at some point you may adjust your style and become more urgent than steady. All of a sudden you no longer are steady. So a personality profile, personality trait is something that can change over time, over to the other side of the equation, where with an archetype, since the archetype actually encompasses the entire spectrum and both sides of the scale, you are always going to have that archetype or be that archetype, but you are going to adapt and change and shift between the light and the shadow aspect, or the shadow and the light aspect with the archetype. So there's another example that shows you how archetypes are a bigger picture, are more encompassing. They aren't just about how you'd respond to things, but the options of response that you have, the scale of response that you have, and that you have access to all of those within the experience of that archetype. I really appreciate you listening in today on this, and hopefully you'll understand a bit more now about archetypes. In the next video, we'll go even further into this discussion. I'm really glad to have you. And of course, as always, please give a thumbs up underneath the video if you like what you see. Also, post comments. I will respond either directly in the comments back to you, or I may even create a whole nother video about what you're interested in knowing about. And you can find me on my website at wildgratitude.com. There's a lot more information about archetypes there. I also offer online classes about archetypes and private individual archetype consulting to help you sort through which archetypes are yours. Thank you so much. Have a great, great day.